Hey guys, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over the review for the second 9 weeks. The first page that you have here is all about systems, and so I'm just going to go really quickly through the function and the important organs of that function. So remember that the digestive is basically breaking down your food into nutrients. So these food molecules will be broken down into smaller and smaller molecules, kind of like we saw in that animation, and then they're going to be sent on to the small intestine, right? The stomach breaks it down and sends it down to the small intestine. So let me not get ahead of myself, and let's look at the important organs on the right hand side. We've got our teeth, which are for chewing, and that's a physical change. And then once we swallow it, it goes down the esophagus into the stomach, and that's acid digestion. We've got acids that mix with it there. In the small intestine, all the nutrients are going to be absorbed from your food. And then by the time it gets to the large intestine, it's just going to be basically be waste and water, and so the large intestine will absorb all the water that it can. Then we've got the skeletal, provides a framework, meaning it gives you your shape, and it's also going to provide protection, like your skull and your rib cage, right? Protect vital organs. So remember, your bones are the hard ones, right? They store calcium, and then we've got flexible cartilage, for example, in our ears and our nose. The muscular system, of course, is for movement, and there's 3 types of muscles: cardiac, smooth, and skeletal. So cardiac muscles are heart muscles. Smooth muscles are going to be in your digestive system. That's what keeps the food going in the right direction. It's also what keeps you from having an accident when you need to go. Those smooth muscles will let you hold it until you can go to the restroom. And then your skeletal muscles are the ones that are attached to bones, so they're going to move bones. And then our excretory system is all about waste, and this one here is specifically talking about the urinary, which is part of the excretory. And so your kidneys will filter your blood while your bladder will hold the waste. So your kidneys are going to send the waste to your bladder through your ureters, and then the bladder holds the waste until you make it to the restroom, and then it comes out of your urethra. The respiratory is all about moving oxygen from outside of your body into your body, and then taking the carbon dioxide from inside your body and releasing it out of your body. So it's basically the exchange of gases. A lot of people get the respiratory and the circulatory mixed up, so you can't do that, right? Circulatory is only happening inside your body because it's the blood, right? But respiratory is exchanging with outside your body. So the trachea is the main tube that goes down to your lungs, and lungs is where the actual exchange happens, and the diaphragm is the part that's making all of this possible. That's the muscle underneath your lungs that causes your lungs to inflate. Then the integumentary is going to protect you from injury and infection. So like if you bump into something or your friend sneezes on you, your skin protects you from that. You've also got hair that's going to keep you warm, and you have sweat glands that will keep you cool. And finally, at the bottom of this page, you have your nervous system, which is all about electrical signals. And you've got the central nervous system, which is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. The spinal cord is the main highway to and from the brain. And then the peripheral nervous system is everything else, all the other nerves in your body. So here's just a little bit of how these systems interact with each other. So this is exactly what I was saying before, right? Remember, respiratory takes stuff in from the outside and releases it from inside to the outside of your body, while the circulatory is going to be delivering inside of your body. That's the main difference here. Your muscular and digestive, those smooth muscles, are moving stuff through your digestive system, so that's how they work together. And then the same thing with the skeletal and the muscular, right? With those skeletal muscles are moving your skeleton. The organizational levels, this is important. You have to know that cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organs make organ systems, and then a bunch of organ systems make an organism. So make sure you study that. Here, it's just a few definitions that you've got. Your human body is just, it's an organism. The organs are made of tissues, and just like I said before, structure is how something is built, and function is what its job is. In other words, what does it do? Here are the answers for the bottom part. I just want to go over a few of these because it's really pretty much repetitive. So you saw these on the front page. On the front page, you don't have circulatory, so make sure that you also study circulatory. Circle that one. So circulatory is F. It transports oxygen and nutrients throughout the body. And then number 5, respiratory, right? Know the difference between that one. That's giving the blood the oxygen. And then another one that wasn't mentioned on the front was endocrine. So that has to do with hormones, right? Your glands releasing hormones. Another one that wasn't mentioned is reproductive, immune. So make sure that you study those that are here that are not on the front page. Sexual and asexual reproduction. So let's start with sexual. I just have a few examples here. Number 7 says, what is sexual reproduction? With sexual reproduction, we have 2 parents and we have a high genetic variation. And that would be an example of an advantage, like for number 9. You have high genetic variation, so all the kids are going to look different. A disadvantage to that, like for number 10, would be you have to have a higher population, right? You're going to have to depend on other organisms to mate, that they can mate with, and so on. Then we've got asexual reproduction. Remember, there's only one parent. The genetic material is identical to the parent. And this can be bad because if there's some disease that comes through or something like that, it can cause, you know, everybody to die. Everybody has the same DNA, and so they all get affected the same way. There's not going to be any with a little bit of a different DNA that's able to survive or anything like that. Okay, I'm going to skip the bottom part here. That's not anything that's going to be covered on the test. That's pretty in depth. So I'm going to go to the very bottom of the page, and here are your answers for that. Coral, flatworms, sea anemones, those are all asexual, along with jellyfish. Yeast, strawberries is one example of a plant that is also asexual. Here we have a few more definitions. At the top here, I wrote the cell theory. So make sure that you study that, right? Cells are the smallest unit of life. All living things are made of cells, and cells come from cells. Organelles are the organs of a cell. We'll talk about that a little bit more depth in a little while. I didn't write anything for animal and plant here because we're going to have the Venn diagram at the bottom. Just remember, plants are going to do photosynthesis, and that's how they make their own food or energy. So here is our Venn diagram. Make sure that you know the difference between plant cells and animal cells, right? Plant cells are going to have a cell wall and chloroplast, and then they're going to have large vacuoles because they need that for a lot of storage. Animal cells won't have a cell wall at all, and they're going to have small vacuoles if they have vacuoles. And what they'll have in common, they're both going to have a nucleus, right, because they're both eukaryotic cells. They're both going to have mitochondria, which produces energy. They're both going to have cytoplasm, the jelly-like stuff everywhere. And they're both going to have a cell membrane, which is what allows stuff in and out of the cell. It controls the contents of the cell. Here you have some more definitions, which we already wrote down stuff for cell and organelle, and then nucleus, cell membrane, cell wall. We're going to talk about those at the bottom here. I blacked out the ones that you don't need to know because that is not something that we cover in 7th grade. So make sure that you study these. Remember that they love to ask questions about mitochondria. They love to ask questions about any of the organelles that are different between plants and animals. So they like to ask about chloroplasts and things like that, or the cells, organelles that make it different from a prokaryotic eukaryotic cell. So make sure that you study like the nucleus, right, which is where the genetic information is. In a eukaryotic cell, it's going to have a nucleus. Prokaryotic cell will not, right? You do, pro, no. And so the prokaryotic cell is just going to have the DNA all jumbled up in the middle. Cell wall, really quick, is going to provide the structure for the plant. Remember, we talked about how plants don't have a skeleton, and they would be just like jelly if they didn't have a cell wall. So remember how I explained we build that. If I was going to make you build a brick wall out of Jello, it would be easier if they had a hard shell on the outside like M&Ms do. And that's what the cell wall does for plant cells. Here we have some, just basically an idea of what they look like. So make sure that you study that, because I've seen questions where they'll have a picture like this and they'll ask you like, what is D or what is A or something like that. So make sure you know what they look like. B is kind of funny because it looks like it's pointing outside, but it's pointing at the cell wall. Then we've got some more organelles. Again, these are the ones that they will probably ask about. So nucleus, remember, it's like the brain because it controls everything, and that's also what contains the genetic material or DNA. The cell wall is that outer stiff covering that is around the plant cells, which is kind of like a skeleton. And then mitochondria is the powerhouse. It produces the energy. So down at the bottom, we've got some multiple choice questions. Number 1 says, which organelle carries the hereditary or genetic information? Of course, the nucleus, right? Number 3, the guard at the entrance of a building is like the cell membrane of a cell because it's the gatekeeper. I skipped number 2, sorry. Number 2, a cell with few energy needs would most likely contain a small number of mitochondria. If it doesn't need to make energy, then it's not going to have that much mitochondria, right? And number 4 is a little tricky because we haven't talked about that word equilibrium, but it says, what is the main function of the cell membrane in all cells? It wants to keep everything equal, right? So it's going to decide what can come in and can't come in, or go out and can't go out, because it wants to maintain that equilibrium, make everything equal. Okay. And then the last thing on the back of your review, it's blank, but there's one thing that I felt like that I wanted to go over again that wasn't included in the review, which is the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So remember, no, you do. Prokaryotic have no nucleus. These are the earliest type of cells. They predate all other life. Eukaryotic are going to have a nucleus, but they both contain genetic material. They both contain DNA. It's just that the prokaryotic is going to be all jumbled in the middle, and the eukaryotic is going to be inside of the nucleus. Okay, so make sure that you study. Good luck on the test. Ask me any questions that you have, and I will see you in class. Bye.